right, here we are on towards the end of June 30th, the day before the first day of Gettysburg, which is why I have a 0 in front of all the turns, all the videos that have been done here. It's the 0th day. We've had a little bit of engagement happening up here, where Heath chased Buford off the hills over here. I guess Lohr's Ridge or something like that. Whistler's Ridge is where we've fallen back to defend. The Union has taken some morale hits for giving up defensive terrain. The only way I get those back is by putting units in reserve, which is something I have not done yet. Most of forces are gathering together. We've got 1st Corps beginning to make its way up on Whistler's Ridge, although it's stretched way out. Now, that's where the main threat is, and I was hoping to get Sickles up there, but Stuart moving on the board convinced me that Sickles needs to put a threat on Stuart instead. I should be able to hold that. I can't let Stuart get behind my units. That's going to just cause all kind of nastiness, I'm sure. So what I want to do is kind of prevent a joining up of the Confederate Army. Now, what's kind of weird is, even though there's the operational map, there still sort of is an edge of the map issue when you're dealing with the tactical. Mainly because it's hard to force somebody into combat on the operational map. And the Union Army, most of it is resting, unable to have gotten on the tactical map. Essentially, there's a weird little situation. In order to prevent too much movement on the operational map, these little wagons say, hey, if you've moved half the day, if you've moved at all in the morning or in the afternoon, in the morning, you're going to get penalized for moving in the afternoon. But that doesn't count once you're on the tactical map, as far as I can tell. Maybe it should, maybe it shouldn't, I don't know. That would certainly have kept the Union from pushing forward as far as they did, because, honestly, you can get quite a bit of movement while you're resting, which is kind of fucked up. And part of the issue that's been going on. What we see here is 2nd Corps gathering together, pushing in the north. They'll be coming in up near Stuart and give Sickles something else to worry about. That's probably going to be happening before the day ends. There's, if you count the lower visibility turns, there's quite a bit of time on them still. But I think most of the fighting is done for today. I just don't think that the Confederates want to push too hard. I don't know. Maybe they should. Maybe they should. Maybe they should be trying to beat up 1st Corps before night falls. We'll think about that. Either way, I think we'll have plenty of time on this video, I'm sure. And yeah, we've got the Union throwing some cav in place. That's what you're seeing down here, to just prevent the Confederates from being able to trace supplies south and force them onto the Gettysburg map, but also make sure that they don't shift the focus from one direction to another and get away. I want to make sure to fight them here and force them into a situation where they have to battle. Yeah, I guess that's about it. It's officially July 4th, I guess. Not by much. Just got done with it's not done, but I'm done with a rather grueling, I guess, last 7 hours of raid. And before that, I didn't get enough sleep, whatever. But anyhow, back up here, time to start, I guess, the 6 p.m. turn. And I allocated out the points. I am a little concerned, not so much here, but, you know, somewhat. Early in Rhodes, they've poked their noses on the map, but they'd be barely on the map. And I don't really like making the transition on that first hex. The problem is there's some Union units kicking around. Jenkins is not quite on the map, so I didn't try to press things too much, but my intention is for Heath to try to come over here and make a threat. Anderson, of course, shifting over on his own against the Union right. Reynolds gave points to Doubleday so he can go down and gather up his own division, which has gotten kind of lost behind. Most of the stuff's in the cup. Over here, I felt like Kilpatrick needs to be under command in case he wants to attack or whatever. Beaufort needs to be under command to react to whatever the hell is going on way down there. I wanted one of 3rd Corps, the 2nd Division here, which is closer to Stuart, to be under command. I didn't want to spend too much, though. He doesn't have a lot of points. He's going to lose a point, though, anyway. But I might jerk a point into each of the units anyhow to get better activity rolls, because, like, putting someone under direct command doesn't necessarily doesn't give you any advantage on the activity roll. So you've got like this balance between, do I want you to be able to actually move, or do I want to spend on the other things? Attack obviously does give an advantage on the activity, but that's a special case. And what else? Yeah, Doubleday has to go down mainly because this thing can't move very far while it's under R&R. It only has the 2 hex movement rule. So, yeah. Is it 2 hex? Or is it a shift down? I don't remember what the hell it is now. God damn it. I know that it's got a penalty of some sort. Yeah. It's just so fucking hard to remember all the different stuff in here. And you know, I don't know if it's any harder than remembering all the different stuff that's in sort of the common life of wargaming, right? Like there's a whole lot, some of which is included in this, but there's a whole lot that like we just take for granted and we don't have to look up all the time because we remember it. But because this is different and has all this new different stuff, it is painful. Okay, unfortunately, what does it say here? Here it says, they retain full movement allowance, defend, okay. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I can move. I don't know why I haven't then. Maybe I've gotten in an active or something like that. Meade didn't get much. I don't know what the fuck he did with it. I know that Slocum got rid of his inactive, but I think he did that on his own roll. Yeah, Meade ended up with a 0, but because of the -1 penalty. Reynolds ended up, or -2 penalty that he gets for having Reynolds on the board. Reynolds ended up with quite a few points because I'm no longer penalizing him now that he's on the tactical board and can actually be taking command of something. I don't know what sense it makes. Like, it's like, yeah, he's only in charge of a wing. He shouldn't be getting, you know, the higher command points than the Army general would get if he had no wing commanders. And what that kind of comes down to is if I have a wing commander, I have a really crappy overall commander in Meade. He's a 1. So whatever if he splits the army in two, he's really crappy. Whoever he gives it half his army to is pretty good. Or his whole army too is just better. So there's no reason to not have Reynolds as your wing commander, because, yeah, sure, Meade's not as impressive, but that's okay. Reynolds is more impressive than Meade at his best. But the same goes, I don't remember, I think it's Sykes that he gives it to, but whoever he gives it to, he can create another wing, and then he can become a -1 command rating. Like, really awful. Anyway, I'm always fatigued after doing the effort for the admin phase. Like much of this game, it just tires me out. So I'm gonna break, go watch some report on the new evidence that was released, or new stuff that was released by a judge on the Epstein case. Woo. So far nothing seems all that shocking, to tell you the truth. It's just kind of the prosecution really kind of like obviously just said, it's okay, dude. Raid went down right after the Klan fight that I went down to watch the end of. So I went in to take a nap and ended up sleeping until like 9 a.m. It's going to be a hot fucking day. So, although I'm a little tired, trying to think what that meant in terms of how much sleep I got. A reasonable amount, to tell you the truth. I don't know why I'm so tired. Maybe just because it's daytime. I'm coming up here to see what I can get done on a turn. Just because I know it's going to be fucking hot up here. Might have to be down in the basement playing something else for a while. Let's open up with Jenkins as their first action, who was over here near the Union unit. I ran him over here, but I got to be real careful. Actually, I was careful before, but I'm not sure I am now. And I'll show you the kind of check I had to make before, and maybe we're wrong. That looks like it's 21 or 27, because Barber writing is hard to see. So I'm guessing 27, because that's 26. 31. 27, 31. And now I come over here to see, did I just jam myself into him? And the answer is yes, I did. So I can't go to that hex. I was hitting, I don't remember where, but yeah. So now, what's confusing about that is, if I, not trying to make the comparison of what I'm looking at here, 2731 is a trail going east-west. 2731 is here. The only thing going through it is here, which I thought was a secondary road. Again, it's fucking very hard, because trails I thought were these little diddles. But it's like really, really hard for me to determine what is what on, and I've been treating this as secondary road for Stuart, on the Barber maps. The distinguishment between the color choices and whatnot to try to show what's what. Yeah, it just, and this isn't just my eyes, this is a matter of, it's really hard to just distinguish between the little different ways he's symbolizing things, because he's trying to make it look natural. Well, it doesn't even look natural to me, right? Like, he's trying to make it like how a little kid would work with colored pencils, is what it looks like to me. It looks like a little kid's colored pencil drawing of a map. And a very well done one, but and in this case, more than in some, the trees and everything look a little less cartoony and whatnot. But it's just not really designed for being able to play on. It's designed to frame and put on your wall or something, if, you know, or on your refrigerator, depending on, you know, how much you like your kid. Yeah. But anyway, the thing that I was trying to point out is, look, I can't go to this hex, so I'm going to have to go somewhere else. I'll go to this 2722 instead, which now we'll recheck that, because that's where I was moving from. That's, oh, this says 32. Whoa, I swear that said 22. Jesus, yeah, it's 30. Okay, I don't know. That is my eyes, but also the kind of non-uniform handwritten style of the hex numbers. And again, I really think he does this all by hand, or did this all by hand. Like all the drawing and everything is by hand, but also the hex numbering is by hand. And in some cases, a number is left out or it's wrong. Compare that to, like, you know, your SPI hex numbering, and it's like, well, those are just put on automatically. You know, they're always the same. It just feels so funny. All right. Anyway, that was the first Confederate movement. Why did I grab that one first? Well, I only had really 3 options. I could pull a chit from here, which is what, Pender? Yeah. I could have moved Heath, or I could have moved Jenkins. Everything else is, I put in ops movement so that they would be able to move a little bit more quickly. Jumping in everywhere, just because I have things to say otherwise. You can see part of Sickles moving up here to intercept Stuart. May not be my best plan. I'm not going up into defensive terrain, and I know from my map that there's shit going on up here that's not far from Stuart. Now, it would be really helpful if I had Stuart on the map here. He's in, and if I had my own unit on the map so I could correspond. If I'm going to be working on both maps, I kind of need to be able to have all the information on at least one of them. He's here at, I guess, 2831, which I think is this hex. And that means that I'm deploying across here, which means whatever's up here is right on me. Now, I've got another division that's going to move up and take position there. But again, I'm not defending particularly good terrain there. But what I wanted to catch was, I think I found the distinction between trails and secondary roads. So this is a pike, and that's the primary roads, and I can kind of see them, right? Yeah, they look a little close to the secondaries, but okay, and to the trails. This, I think, is secondary here. I can look 4424 to make sure. Yeah, there's a secondary going through there. There's a secondary going through it too. Actually, what I was going to say was, I think this slight color difference is the difference, but it's not. I think it's here, this 4322. This thing is different from this. There's a color difference between these, which are secondary roads, and that. Let's see if 4322 has anything going through it. Yeah, see, it has this trail here and it has the secondary here. So that's how you distinguish, is this is a little bit more yellow and a little bit thicker. And of course, if it's hand-drawn, which I believe it is, you're relying on, you know, the artist always getting it right or whatever. I honestly have a lot of difficulty telling unless I see. So let's see. Like, basically, unless I see the difference right in hand, it's very hard for me to see. So this, I think, is a pike, right? It looks a lot like this. We go, we look. What's coming out of north of Gettysburg? Yeah, there's pikes coming out of north of Gettysburg, or Primary Road, or whatever. Which means this is a secondary road. This looks like it's a secondary road coming through here. I'm okay. I think this is a trail. But again, you know, like with the slopes, maybe this isn't as bad as the slopes, but it's pretty close. It's really fucking hard to distinguish one terrain type from another on these kind of maps. And, you know, there's no way, like, this is the whole thing. Whenever, because Rick Barber was a name in terms of his map making, and people, you know, companies went out to get him for his beautiful maps and whatever. Clash of Arms has a lot of them, but Clash of Arms is not the only company that used him. I don't think they're like. I know the Stonewall Sword stuff is done by him, and I don't think that's Clash of Arms. But you don't go out and get somebody like that for your maps, and then tell them, yeah, they're just not readable. That's not why you're getting the maps. You're getting the maps because people don't care to play the games. They care to look at the maps, and you know, they care about your fancy component, your wonderful textures and whatnot. I'm really convinced of that with COA. That, like, I think, yeah, there are some things that maybe people play a fair amount, but I think for the most part, people don't play COA games all that much. And you know, they're looked at more as, so like this feels like it was an opus of overindulgence in terms of the rules design itself. Understandable, right? You know, first time designing a game, you don't learn all the lessons and whatnot. You want to bring everything, you know, that's been bothering you about other war games, etc. You have your own vision in play. But it's not the first time he's designed a map. And, you know, I think the problem is all the cocksucking as to how beautiful they are ended up, you know, making it so that any criticism was not heard and couldn't be heard anymore. So, whatever. Who knows, maybe I would feel differently if I found these particularly attractive. I actually don't. Like, at a distance, I do. I like the color choices and whatnot, but as I come in closer and start to actually play, these little circles, they look stupid. The little sketchwork of the trees and whatnot. Again, not so much on this map, but on some of his stuff, it looks juvenile. All kind of things. And on top of all that, like, I'm willing to deal with that, just like I'm willing to deal. So the line of battle map was a little painful to cope with. It's a topographical map. It makes the most effort you can make, I think, to make a topographical map, you know, playable, but it's painful to deal with. Part of it is just the information that it's conveying is excess information for movement and everything. But this is making almost no effort at all to make the map a playable surface. And so people move faster sometimes than other times. Like, sometimes trails are going to work like secondary roads, and you know, the difference is pretty extreme actually. Secondary roads give you a half movement. Trails give you a 1 point movement, just the same as clear terrain. Yeah, that's a big difference. Well, that's going to just happen at times. One's going to be red as the other. I think I'm most often going to be moving too quickly on trails. Moving a couple of divisions, like I said, I'm already dead tired. I finished up with Buford over here, getting him on that ridge line completely. That's all he really wanted to do. and that's all I can handle for now. I've got to go back to sleep. But at least I got to see what the new event for, or new events for Raid are, even if I didn't get to play much. It's funny, you know, think about these things as I'm walking up the stairs or whatever. I had to grab tea. I view playing the board game, like, I view different levels of wasting my time, right? And if I go out and spend a fair amount of time doing yard work, which I'm not going to do because it's fucking going to be hot today, like, I might have been able to earlier, but now it gets really hot on this hill in the morning. And then, you know, if it's already going to be a hot day, it just stays that way. If it's not going to be a super hot day, it is cooler here in the afternoon when it's at the hottest everywhere else. You know, if I'm out doing yard work or I go for a walk or whatever, I don't feel like I've wasted my day. Sometimes when I go for a walk, if I didn't have anything to do on it, I do feel like, well, that was a waste of effort and everything, and I'm really tired and all that for no good reason. But doing something like playing a game or sitting and reading or whatever, I do still feel like I'm wasting my time, but it's a different kind of waste. And then if I'm sitting in front of the computer or just sleeping my days away or whatever, that's when I feel like I've really wasted my day. And, you know, I'm like in that kind of mix. I feel like I've been playing a fair amount of this, even though I've gotten jack shit done in terms of the stuff that needs to get done, right? At least I made some progress on this game. I guess I'll play a little bit more. It's like early-ish afternoon. Usually about the time that I would get off work. The reason I don't think I'm going to finish up the turn right away is I'm already, like, as I made my way up the stairs, I started to say, I'm hungry. Well, Kilpatrick's calf just moved, chasing Jenkins. I have to check what happens because I was able to make contact with him, which I think means I'm allowed to attack him, not on the tactical map, but on the strategic, on the operational map, even though we're well into here. And he gets to, I'm not sure whether or not he gets to withdraw under those conditions, but I got a real problem with this. And this is what showed up before as well. I mentioned it. Look, we're deployed for battle, right? We shouldn't be in these long columns when we show up on this board, especially if we've already fought a fight in those same hexes, which is what could actually happen here. Jenkins doesn't want it to happen. I'm not sure if he gets to withdraw because he's already used his move. And the withdrawal does eat up your movement. But yeah, I'm just confused. I gotta move this. You know, in the meantime, Jenkins has already gotten to pull his troop back together. Like, he's spread out along the road, moving. He's already gotten what I would consider to be about a turn's movement in terms of, like, repositioning your column into a line, in terms of clumping it together. And of course, Kilpatrick, I want to call him Fitzgerald for some reason, who's not even in the, there's no by that name in this battle that I'm aware of. I'm sure there is one, but there's none of the generals represented are. In any game that I've played on the which go deeper than my knowledge in terms of what generals are present, etc. Kilpatrick ends up ends up moving to the extent of his movement, actually, making contact, and his entire tail end has returned. Now, the reality of the situation is that they should be in column because neither one had enough movement to break column. And actually the reality is that Kilpatrick, I think, actually should be a hex back, but the way the collapse works, it collapses up into the leader. I don't know. I think. The operational game is just so fucking weird because, it's trying to represent stuff. But if you were deployed for battle, you really should be deployed for battle in the hex. And if you weren't deployed for battle, if you were strung out along the road, you should be strung out along the road. And I think they just didn't want to make the operational game so complicated that it could represent all the situations that are being represented in the tactical game. But it feels so wrong otherwise. Because it kind of tries to represent them everywhere except within the tactical inset. I see the fix. You can't fight on the tactical map. In fact, I was off by a hex. Jenkins actually goes back to the tail. When an army's been revealed, the moving force may continue to advance until adjacent if they have the movement. However, if both are on the inner map segment corresponding to the tactical map, movement must stop when the forces are 2 hexes apart. In the case of an infantry division, the counters representing the division are then deployed into battle formation. I don't deploy into battle formation. Hold on. Cavalry forces are never forced to deploy to battle by adjacent enemy infantry but must fall back. So there will be no combat here. It looks to me like Kilpatrick is still spread out in his cav way. And at the end of the turn, these forces will have to deploy to the field. Now, yeah. I think. If it has, however, that both forces are corresponding movement must stop when they're too apart. Yeah. So, actually, the cav screen here provides the Union with a way of blocking Early's movement down this way, which is kind of interesting. May have been wrong for me to put Stuart on the map. He may have been safer on the operational map, moving around on there until he was forced to show up. I'm really bothered by that concept. I feel like if you're, engaged or whatever, if you're close to engagement and on the tactical map, you should be on the tactical map. But the way the rules look, it looks like there's some potential advantages for Cav to stay over on the operational map within the tactical insert. And maybe for other units too, small units that want to, that want to delay and harass. To an extent that I'm not sure I'm happy about. But at least we figured out what the rules say happened in this case. And we come to Heath moving, and we get the wonder of what happens when you have Poochie maps, when you make the quality of the map paper too good, as it were, which, And again, look, I know, throw Plexi on it, sure. There aren't a lot of places on this map where it's really pooching too badly. There are a fair amount, though. Boom, boom. That's a particularly bad one. There may be some pressure. I'm not seeing it by how I've got it taped or whatever, but I'm not seeing that. It looks more like it's just a pooch in the map, a big gap up there. Wasn't expecting to see fighting around that edge, whatever. There's not much I can do. Every time I fix the counters, they slide back down because they're glossy counters. Glossy counters don't tend to cling to each other. Plus, I've clipped them, which takes away some of the resistance that they have. Yeah, what about the plexi? Yeah, I explained it before. There's no way I'm going to take this wonderful texture of a map, you know, which is, to me, perhaps the best thing about the map is the paper that it's printed on, and you know, cover it with something that creates hovering pieces and glare and all that shit. You know, part of the advantage of this map is it's matte. It doesn't glare, and just a whole bunch of factors that I'm willing to put up with this. But for some people, this would be unacceptable, and plexiglass would be acceptable. I doubt there's a hell of a lot of people who find this game acceptable enough to play across the board. It's too cumbersome for what it does. I don't know. We'll see. I'm struggling mightily. Like, I think my feeling would be, if I wasn't videoing it, I had a tendency to make my way through things even before I started videoing. So there are definitely a few games that I never finished. Vietnam comes to mind, that I wanted to, just couldn't bring myself to. A few that I probably quit midway through all the time. I don't think this feels like that kind of thing. It feels like there's going to be this burden of misery throughout my life as I play it. The Confederate Chit Cup is done, and has been for a while. I've been pulling Union chits. The only one of any importance that came out was this, what the hell is that? Humphreys under Sickles. Moved up into position. Now, this position here, first of all, Stuart can't do much about it. A big line of infantry, the cav is just, you know, dismounted cav is not going to count up very well, I'm hoping. It's okay. They're okay units. They might actually out quality. However, I feel like there's something really wrong about using cav heavily in the fighting. I don't care how you're using them. The game may actually encourage it though, because I don't believe that cav costs you more the way it does in the other games I've played. But that positioning is leading me to worry. Hey, you know, obviously I want to move down and I want to focus on this, and I also have to worry am I next to hex, so I do that check that I did before, right? How far am I? I'm like at 27 at the worst. I think the better argument you can make is I'm at 28-32. And let's look over here and see what we see. 27, 20. They're not even close to each other. What the fuck am I talking about? Like 28-32 is over here. I'm misreading. Okay, let's look again. 27 is the worst place I'm at. 28 has to be 28, and going diagonal from that. Okay, so now we look again. And the far point we have is 27, 28. So we're on a line down here. Now, you know, it wouldn't maybe be unwise for me to have some flags on there just to indicate what's on the map. Maybe different color, the different type of flag or something, to help me not make the kind of mistakes that I'm continuously facing here. I think Stuart is still on the map here, to tell you the truth. No, because this is Jenkins, yeah, and these are the 3 infantry divisions. But I can't wait to be done with the operational maps. I just want to get everybody on. Even if it's ahistorical, I want everybody on the tactical map as soon as possible because it's not fun. It's not fun, and it's not adding anything to the game particularly. I mean, the only thing it's adding is I'm making up ideas that I ought to be patrolling back here and stuff like that. Better handled by maybe some kind of much more abstract system, like the one that shows up in the battles of the Age of Reason, at least in the one that I played. So yeah, my worry is kind of, look, are these guys enough of a problem that I don't want to bring the infantry in, that I want to run back with Stuart and maybe focus on trying to get to that direction? Well, look, clearly if I can take First Corps from behind, I degrade their position and they have to get the hell out of there. But I think Third Corps is in a position kind of like 11th Corps was historically, where they're holding a line that's not particularly good terrain, and they might get chewed up by the superior numbers. They should. So, I don't know. Maybe it's worth hitting them. Close to the end of my tactical movement, or whatever, before I hit the operational movement, I noticed I forgot to assign to anywhere the artillery reserve unit, so I moved that as part of a burning of the ops moves by the Confederates. And it's not really burning, it's that the Confederates kept ordering the Union to go, and the Union picks units that aren't moving. But we got to an interesting place where, I don't know if it's all that interesting. I'm moving Anderson, but what did lead me to pick up the camera again is this space here. Now, remember my distinguishing feature between sort of whether something was a major slope and a minor slope was how much line there is. So this looks pretty heavy. It's dark, right? It's not as dark as Cliff's. I zoom in on it and there are no lines. But then I come over here, what looks like a lesser thing. I'm not seeing any lines there either. I thought I saw some from a distance. I thought I saw little hash marks there. This has, I don't know, I can't tell with my eyes. It looks like, something is apparent, like, and then I can't find it. Maybe what I'm seeing is these little lines that are distinguishing the hex sizes or the hex boundaries, rather than using whole hexes, of course, because that would detract from the appearance of a colored pencil job. But yeah, I'm seeing what look like lines when I'm further away, and then they just disappear everywhere. I think what I'm just going to go with is, look, if it's kind of darker, because that's what it feels like it should be. If it's kind of darker, but kind of darker, I'm going to be making guesses just like I am with, I don't know, is this a primary or secondary road? I know this is or is this a secondary road or a trail? I'm okay because I've got primary roads here, secondary road here, and something smaller. Okay, all three types are represented in my view. I can make the distinguishment there. With the slopes, I find it a lot harder, but it's the same kind of situation. If they're not all visible to me in the snapshot that I'm looking at that particular moment, I got no idea what I'm facing. I can tell primary roads and I can tell cliffs. Everything below those two things, it's a crapshoot. For example, what's going through the town? Well, are these main primary arteries? It looks like the town is filled with those, but I read them as secondary roads for the artillery. Because I'm not sure. I'm just not sure. You don't... They should be different colors or something, right? Of course, that would detract from the overall appearance when you look at the map out like this. But I've got an unplayable terrain representation, as opposed to, again, what the hell? Sure, CWB games look hideous. They're garish colors, etc. They happen to be completely usable, right? TSS doesn't look hideous. It's got some nice muted colors. It's not busy the way this is. It's not garish the way the CWB games are. But Simonson was a genius and knew how to get the amount of information he wanted to get across in most games without making things ugly. But this, and somewhere between is LOB. The LOB game, yeah, it used a contour map. It was difficult compared to the CWB maps. It also conveyed more information. So, how do you want to put it? This is conveying more information as well. It's harder to convey more information clearly and distinctly. I didn't find myself struggling like I am with this one. Anyhow, I mean, honestly, I don't know what my rule is. I look at the thing here, and I see what looks like little lines of these here, and this looks like scatter. But it doesn't really work that way when I come to here. I look at this. This definitely has lines. Look at that. You see little lines coming through it. This one looks like it has little lines. It has little lines, I think. I don't know. It starts to blur as I get closer. Okay, this one has lines, but this one looks like it's minor. But the lines, I think, are just maybe an artifact of how many dots there are present. The more dots, the more likely it's to look like lines at a certain distance. Shade, which is, I think, what it actually is distinguished by. And you could also see it's darker, it's moderately dark, it's not as dark. Yeah, these are looking like lines to me now. It's very hard for me to make that kind of distinguishment. Just like it's hard for me to see a difference between certain blue and green tones, and the game is all... It's not horrible. I feel like I can distinguish... First of all, the different colors mean nothing. There's no elevation levels represented as rules in the game. I think the colors are a hint and an indication of the height difference, or to show the contour lines. This is not explained anywhere. It's certainly not explained on the tan and, I guess, black ink representation that the key is, right? I'm hating this thing. I had a brief problem here. I'm moving Stuart and I'm pulling him away from the infantry. I don't know why exactly, but feeling like, well, maybe there's room for me to slip away out this way or something. I don't want to face them. But the problem is, turns out, Rhodes is in this hex. So I had actually moved here. This would have blocked Rhodes's movement on the roads, and I want to bring him on. So yeah, that shouldn't be allowed. But I'm basically having to, walk from over there to over here And, you know, it's kind of a painful walk because I got no way around there, so I got to go completely around to check a hex. And that's regularly the case. You catch it on the camera sometimes. It probably makes you real motion sick because I'm walking great distances. Yeah, I don't understand the level of motion sickness people get off the little games, but when I'm walking around with these big ones, man, yeah, it's gonna kill. Here we're at the conjunction I don't like. Let's see what we got here. Rhodes couldn't move his full movement and to stop here because, and here I'm just interpolating really, because the rules don't really cover what happens if somebody's on, like, the rules as written, I think I can just walk through Sickles. Obviously that's not allowable, but 2828 was the hex that Sickles is in, and I find myself stopping here. That means Rhodes is going to be, you know, spread out in a road column, but he doesn't actually show up in a road column because he's close enough that he deployed for combat, which doesn't work. Like, the way you position your pieces on the tactical map does not represent what's actually happening here on the operational. I'm gathered for combat. Johnson's going to follow me up. There's not room for Johnson. There's not room for Rhodes on the map as it stands. With him only like a hex in, right? He's basically, he's showing up starting here and trailing back. There's no way there's room for Rhodes. But over on that map, he's deployed in tactical, you know, for battle, right? It just makes no sense. The game, the linkage between the two maps was not properly handled in terms of the roles. And my feeling, again, is there's no way anyone could have played this and not seen this issue during playtesting. Now, again, almost everyone who seems to have a high opinion of it did not, you know, that I've seen, says things like, I didn't play the operational game. Why the fuck did you pick this game up then? I don't know. There are interesting and different things on here. There are people who really do like the tactical system. I find it too cumbersome. I can see why people like it though. So at the very least, yeah, there is a reason why people picked it up. Unfortunately, the reason I picked it up was that it did something new. It did something so exciting and new, which was playing the Gettysburg campaign at an operational level and then zooming into the battle. Unfortunately, the battle has to be Gettysburg because not enough maps to cover other possible battles. The only other possible battle there isn't generated from these ops maps. It's a completely separate scenario, you know, a complete what if, not the starting situation in this game, and not at all what I would have wanted to see. Like, I would have been excited to see something that covered the Gettysburg campaign from the beginning. I would have been excited to see something that covered it from here and did a good job of generating the victory points and other aspects to it. As to the tactical system, I'm pretty sure it's not my cup of tea when it comes down to it. It feels way too cumbersome and doesn't focus in on the issues that I find the most interesting, but I can see why some people would like this kind of command and control, this kind of more intricate chit pull, because look, it cuts away the problem that chit pull always had. Chit pull's problem was, well, you just, you know, the only thing is you just don't know where you know, who's going next. That's not enough to cover all the different issues that it's trying to do to do work for. And I feel like Barber's actually managed to cover most of the issues that this game, that, you know, in terms of actual command and control. Chick pull is usually like, well, you just don't know who's going to go. Right? Well, that's an option if you put them in here, but you got the opportunity to spend your points to, at least for short-term commands, to get them underway. And for longer-term stuff, you have the PPPs, which kind of can say at least, look, I want your men ready for an extended campaign, whatever, you know, an extended series of actions throughout the day, without specifying what it is. And that's an interesting design choice that I don't mind at all. But... And then you've got, you know, ideas of like recovery and stuff like that, these different kinds of orders, which all kind of flow into something very interesting. Unfortunately, the level of detail that the terrain is being handled at is more than I like to cope with. And then the representation of that terrain makes it nearly unplayable. Like, this is already a situation I'm not really thrilled with, where I have to do a lot of movement point counting, where I have to worry about the ordering of the units, where I basically have to move all my units at once in my head, and I have to cheat. I can't follow the rules. Like, I have to move the rearmost unit through to see where it's going to get to be able to move my forward units and stuff like that. It's all just painful, right? And I don't like doing it. And if I was playing opposed, someone would be like, hey, you're cheating. You can't just move through there. And I'm like, okay, great. Let me have some imaginary, like, let me have some pieces that I can use to represent these units that look just, you know, that are equally distinguished to them, that I can indicate where they're going to move to once I move the guys who are fucking in their way, because I can't move the whole formation at once, right? It's not like these, and honestly, look, I get why you want the more detailed and accurate movement situations. Another thing that I really like about this that I don't see in many games, especially at the only game that I really see it in is Great Campaigns of the American Civil War, and I like it there, which is the idea of, look, movement is not a fixed rate. Movement is actually very, very random. Now, this is something the traditional chit pulls try to take into account. You end up cluttering each other up and getting in each other's way. Your movement, if you're in close contact with the enemy gets the jump on you and you don't move as far as you would have liked, whatever. But here, it explicitly gets it to a, look, how many of your movement points does your unit have? It's not as, it has more discrete points than the GCACW did. I think Lee versus Grant had it as well. Anyway, this idea of like an activity level that translates over, and how well the units actually accomplish the orders they're trying to do at that time in terms of movement and repositioning. I think that's very important. And I kind of feel like, you know, I've always said, hey, any game that ignores true random influences on combat is probably not a real simulation. I kind of feel along the same lines with movement. Any game that allows you to move a fixed amount each turn, you know, is probably not really a simulation, at least in that respect. And, you know, the question then becomes, well, okay, but do you have to simulate everything? No, obviously not, but field maneuver is one of the more interesting things to a lot of gamers. As I began setting the pieces on the board from the operational map, it became clear that I had somehow fucked up It's hard to tell because, you know, you have to remove the pieces to put them on the board. But I started with some union pieces. Hey, Greg comes in here. That's fine. That worked just fine. Kilpatrick coming in this way. Well, what I found out when I got to Jenkins was that he had moved to a hex that I had shifted the wagon, the artillery, and a little bit of Stuart back to. I actually feel like I should cover that. Worse, Jenkins was stretched back this way. I don't know how he got on the board. Honestly, I think he was being followed, but I got no room, man. I got no room. If I started here and stretched back the way I came, I'm running into Kilpatrick. Now that wasn't obvious over here. It wasn't at all obvious. Kilpatrick was 2 hexes away. So I think Jenkins has to be positioned this way. I don't know. I'm still questioning because I really don't want my artillery back where it is. So I'm thinking about pulling Jenkins back 2 hexes. Shit, the tape is not holding. And these little half maps have no solidity to them at all. Like, they're designed of the same material. I could go 1 more hex forward. Okay, so then everybody has to move a hex forward, because on one representation the leader counts as something that takes up space on the board, and on the other he's just a leader who doesn't take up space on the road board. And then these guys were here, and I think I had Chambliss heading down this way. But would this all be in Stuart's range is the question. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. So 10, 11. Or in the other direction, but the other direction is subject to get cut. So I've got kind of a collision going on here, which is not good. I've got a map that's shifting around, which is even worse. I may have to pull more tape to make that stand in place. I used to use paper clips, which were kind of iffy before I discovered the magic of removable tape. But they ended up sometimes rusting when a game was up for a long time and leaving like marks on the map, which I kind of didn't like. This tape has been a magical thing, but it also doesn't hold all that well. Neither did the paper clips, to be honest. So I still have more units to clean up and place on the board. I'm just showing you the difficulty. The fact that I don't have a real representation on that map of what's going on this map, because everybody so what happened was Jenkins collected up in this hex. All his units were in this hex. So Kilpatrick can move forward and hit this hex, and that's why he was able to follow him without clustering, and I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm leaving it as is. It's closer to the reality, because Jenkins was supposed to have been deployed for battle, right? I think. I don't know, he was kind of stretched out, so, like, that's how I knew he was going south. I don't know what's going on. Maybe, so there is another issue. So 2833 on here, and look, Granite Hill Station is back here at 2734. And this may actually be the answer. Is that they're fucked up somehow. 2833 is this hex. Granite Hill is back here at 2837. I was in Granite Hill. Yeah, okay. So I see what I fix. I just couldn't read the numbers on the map. Again, the handwritten numbers, not always visible to me. Okay, so I have to pull back. No, that doesn't make sense either. That couldn't be right. You know, and the fact that I have to destroy what's here to get things set up. So this is 28, 33, 34, 28, 35. 28, 35. I think 28. Maybe I didn't read that right. 28, 33, 28, 35. Yeah, I think I'm back a couple of hexes, and that means Jenkins can be there. But again, this is the kind of shit that you're going through, trying to run back and forth between maps to see what's the hex number. Ah, fuck, I got it wrong. Oh, boy. You see why I love this game so fucking much. Having issues with units. I had these stacked with Jenkins because they kind of didn't look like him at all. I don't know who's who, right? I put this off out of my mind at one point or another. For infantry divisions, they got a 2-letter code for the units that makes perfect sense. But here, I've got people, and let's see if I've got anything. I've got people here like WA, WA. WA is not part of any of this shit. I've got AS. I don't have anyone with that name in command of cavalry. These are cavalry artillery, yes. Jones, VA. I've got other VA units. I'm assuming those are Virginians, right? But that's not how the game works, okay? So for example, we come over here. Jenkins is marked VA. What's VA? Who is that? Should these cav be under Stuart? I don't know. I don't know where the fuck these units are, who they're commanded by. When I look at infantry commands, let's find one here. So for example here, this is Pickett. Everything has a PK to indicate it's Pickett. His organic artillery has a PK. Now, the Cav don't have organic artillery, but for some reason or another, they've labeled some of these with letters that have nothing to do with the leaders, in complete contradiction of everything else that's happening in the game. Where do I put those units? I don't know. AS is probably Ashford. He's not a commander in the game. He doesn't have a command. He doesn't have any units. He's not an extension here. The only extension is whether Jenkins is part of fucking Stuart. I noticed this because I had a Robertson here. I'm like, wait a minute, Robertson hasn't come on yet. He's over here along with Jones. So Jones, that's Alexander. A whole pile of people here. Okay, wait a minute. We got Jenkins C under Pickett. Okay. I don't know why. It's got to be this then. Yeah, Robertson's over here. So his unit, and I guess that NC is North Carolina. But these aren't all like that because I have AS. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Beckham, which is a couple of artillery units. I don't know. They're not the right color to go with. Like Jenkins shouldn't have artillery with him, but he was detached from Stuart. But Stuart seems to be all red, except these Beckham artillery here. Okay. Well, we'll just tag these in with Jenkins there. Does he have some artillery? He doesn't. I was gonna put Beckham back forward, although that feels like it's cheating, right? Like I made the decision later that my artillery, we'll send them this way, that my artillery would mix in. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing now. This is 2 units mixing in together, as far as I can tell, by doing that. All right, we'll just do this. I feel like I'm cheating by sending my artillery to the front of the line, but you don't have to decide your deployment of your column until it gets placed on the map. This is turning into a fucking nightmare, the amount of units that I have to put on the board at once. I've got all of Ewell showing up at the same time. First Corps isn't showing up yet. They're on the edge of the map situation. Actually, not all of Ewell. Two of Ewell's divisions are coming in. And they're coming in the same area here, right? 2634, which is... I hope it's not this way. Okay, great. 2634 is over here. We got one coming in there. That's going to be kind of cluttered. We got the Union already off the map there. That's the far unit. The other one is here at 2629, which should be okay. That might be this pike, though. Kind of looks like it. Yeah, that's why I backed off here. And now the map moved again. I thought I had it aligned. I had it aligned and I stuck the tape down and it wasn't aligned. Greatish time, and I just don't have the willpower to put these extra units on the board yet. I hope I remember, because things are going to get really, really ugly if I do not. And that puts me at... I'm still in here. I haven't done weather yet. I've done degradation. But I'm close to the end of the turn. I'm just putting everything on the fucking board to try to represent it. And it's turning into a nightmare. It's not showing up the way I expected it to. Things are colliding with each other because of the mix mash of the two boards. It's not a good solution, man. Like... It really just isn't. The idea of being able to move around on the internal map, on the inset, well, on the operational map within the inset area, I think was a real bad decision. I think that's causing a lot of this issue. If you're going to do that, you've got to do something so that there's always a representation on both maps for anything that's on both maps. And it has to be an appropriate one. So, for example, if I'm in multiple hexes here, I shouldn't be in a one hex. I shouldn't have a flag just for the lead. It should be every hex that I occupy has a flag, right? And every hex that I occupy on here should also be flagged, just to show the road column moving on that map. Honestly, I don't know. There's some visual advantage to being able to see things moving around inside the inset, but I feel like once you get on here, you should be deployed, and the inset should the operational map needs to reflect that. And the game just would require a fair amount more components to be able to handle all of that, whatever it is. I feel like the biggest problem was the idea of using an inset map to begin with. Something like the Devil May Pay or whatever, which did not use this full operational map, but rather used a point-to-point system with, I guess, one of the points being the battlefield, makes more sense. That way you don't have to represent movement on the inset map. You do have to represent which roads and whatever people are coming in on into the inset area. On the other hand, I don't know. It's got to do with scaling, and it's hard to tell. The idea of warped scaling, it creates unreasonable situations. So, for example, something takes up a lot more space outside these dots than it does within them, and I think it also takes up less space within the inset. I think the inset's a little different scale from what surrounds it, and that may be actually kind of fading out like a camera lens would. There was something else. Oh yeah, the fact that the game, and I keep harping on this, but the game just doesn't have victory conditions that have anything to do with the operational map. They only have to do with kill the enemy. Well, I can kill the enemy anywhere. There's nothing to direct me to Gettysburg for that except that they can't just withdraw, or something. I mean, I can actually kill the enemy here, maybe, if I'm lucky. But yeah, and no concept of any of the military, requirements for an army to operate, like maintaining a supply line back and like that and the like. Now you could make an argument that maybe Lee was cutting his supply lines and pulling a Winfield Scott here. I don't buy that. He wanted a retreat route back to Virginia. He wasn't giving up. He didn't. He had to protect Richmond. This was a raid. This was not a screw it. We'll take what we need and we'll make it to Harrisburg, and the Union will certainly surrender if Harrisburg falls. Yeah. Even if the Army of Northern Virginia is cut off at Harrisburg, that will be a blow so significant that the Union will simply collapse. Yeah, I just don't buy it. So he needs some line of retreat back. And he's in a position at the beginning of the scenario where he's kind of put himself, where the Union has moved up fast enough that his lines of communication are threatened. And he has a few choices right at the beginning, I would say. Operationally, he has a choice to withdraw. This would be a decent path. The problem is his army's split. He can't bring it all back in one place, and there's a concentration of Union forces to the east. Once the Confederates are aware, via the tripwire or any other means, that there's a Union force back here, he should immediately be panicking. This is a bad situation, right? The fact that I cut across here, and maybe that shouldn't even be allowed, but the fact that I cut across here with Merritt and threatened his supply line, that should have triggered almost a 5-alarm fire in Lee's mind and force him to do something. What's something? It's hard to tell. Once he knows what's collecting up here, if he knows what the map looks like and there's no roads going south between Frederick's in Maryland, isn't it? And Reisterstown, well, I'm fucked. I mean, basically, yeah. I don't know that I believe that either. I really don't. That seems unlikely. The evening of continuous shelling is going on. I think most of the big shows have ended, but I'm still getting, you can't see anything, but I walked out. First of all, there's still obviously fireworks going off. They're not legal in my town, but I think they're legal in the town in that direction, which is, I can actually see about 30%, 40% of their show when it goes off. There's a wonderful spot that I can stand at where I can see, it's, I don't know, a couple blocks away, basically. where I can see like 3 different towns full shows in full view, but a lot of people gather there on my hill, and it's kind of a mess. I was walking down there most years. I've gone since the pandemic when there was shows again. I don't know why. My reaction is, oh, we got something. My reaction is very much the same, whether it's just me or I think that's just like individuals firing off kind of nice fireworks. My reaction is pretty much the same as when I'm at home, which is I step outside, I watch about 2 minutes, and I'm like, yeah, okay, it's fireworks. So I don't know. It really isn't that different when I go to, one of the parties or whatever. If there's music or something going, oh, we got something going on behind some trees over there. If there's music or something to watch, it's different. It's like, yeah, I'm willing to cope with dancing and everything and then seeing it. And the other thing is, it's me going alone and has been for a long time. I can remember back in Buffalo, going with my first wife a couple of times and everything. Just a more enjoyable experience when you have people with you. My second wife never wanted to do anything. There'd be too many people and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, I would drag myself out in these vague hopes, maybe that I meet other people or run into people I know or something along those lines. It's pretty much faded for whatever reason. Okay, where the hell am I? I'm deploying I'm deploying second corps units that are going to be on the board. Yeah. I knew I walked away in disgust. I forgot why. Issue with the, hey, you're within 2 of someone, gather up into combat formation on the operational board, is that I don't remember which road this guy is on. He could have been coming down this trail. I'm pretty sure he was on the secondary road. But yeah, it's like, okay, he's not in the formation. He won't be translated into the formation that he appears to be in over on the operational map when you move to the tactical map. He's in the formation he was in before he moved into that, fighting position. It really should, it should reflect what's on the board here. It should not force you onto the board in road column when you've deployed according to the operational rules. I find that really annoying. Okay, and we get a nasty roll for the weather. It is clear, hazy, or high heat and 6 p.m. though, so there's a -1 to it. So instead of 17, it's 16, but that still drives it up to hazy. We're also moving into a low light turn at 7 p.m. Or a lower light turn. And I think that in combination with hazy is going to make it really hard to see. I don't think as bad as night, but probably as bad as 8 p.m. would normally be. We got the 2 units, roads and early, coming on over there. The really annoying thing is roads over more to the left, cutting some of those cav off there. He's actually stretching back into this hex and further back. Johnson is there. I just don't buy that Johnson can be there. So I'm going to push him back at least 1 hex. Might say he's another hex back if I need more room, because I shouldn't have to reapportion everything, because the truth of the matter is, whatever road Johnson is on, I've got Johnson actually was in this hex, right, with his lead unit. Because Rhodes is completely collected here, I was able to make it there. Well, the next hex back, and probably the next one for that matter, is filled up. If you think about, you know, how you're allowed to do road movement in the tactical game. That's the end of the turn, and that's kind of cool. I think I'm going to jump to the next turn right away because I didn't have that much to do. I was just so disgusted. And still am. I mean, don't get me wrong. The Union manages to grab the initiative. Meade got himself a nice big die roll. We had a couple of problems. What's his name? Slocum. By his name, has picked up a inactivity marker. He can't do anything anyway, but nothing too exciting on the Union side. Spent some directed commands for Sickles to get his units in order. The First Corps, I just want them in march order. I don't want them to rush too far, too hard, or whatever. Although there is some threat of an outflank. I ought to be giving up this terrain. I got to remember to do that because that outflank is nasty. If I fall back to Hare Ridge, that's a more reasonable place. But it's kind of painful to do. Moving your forces is just painful in the game. So, you know, I don't want to do it. Fighting painful. I don't want to do it. What do I want to do? I want to quit. Anyway, I made my choices there. Beaufort is under directed command so that I can get a jump with him if I need to. I really, I don't think I'm within range of Wadsworth is the problem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Like, I can get Beaufort under command with Doubleday. I can't get Wadsworth under command. The range there for a corps is on a different side is only 12 movement points instead of the 18 that it is on the operational map, which, whatever. Again, there's distortion between the two maps. I think the movement points on the operational are actually are reflect. I don't know what it's reflecting. I don't know. I don't actually know why they would change the two, except like they couldn't come up with a balance or something that all worked with the same numbers. It does add a little bit of annoyance to facets. But yeah, I mean, the rest of First Corps is close to Hare Ridge. I can pull the cav back to cover a flank. All that's assuming that the Confederates don't launch an attack. If they launch an attack up on Whistler's Ridge, you know, I kind of got to defend, I guess, or fall back under fire, neither of which I want to do. I'm not intending to do that with the Confederates, though. You can see Heath has actually entered rest and recovery. Spent some points. Oh, Pickett got himself inactivated earlier. That's a problem. Longstreet's too far away to have spent any points to recover him. So I'm probably going to be, if I remember, sending Longstreet back there. I need to break. The command phase is taxing enough for my taste as to how long I can be in a position at once. I really want to get Beaufort someplace where he can rest, but he sure the hell can't rest there. Can Heath rest there? You know, if I fall back to this Little Horse Ridge or whatever, maybe. Far enough away, and I don't expect a Union attack. That's the big thing. If a Union attack happens, it would be problematic. But I just want to get his forces recovered before the overnight, you know, because I don't get any recovery of that kind overnight. I get other kinds. Here it is Sunday morning, and indeed it has started to get really hot here. Starting on Friday, we've been hitting 100 degrees, and it's supposed to continue until Wednesday, which doesn't sound like that much to someone from Phoenix. It's not that bad. It really isn't, but up here in the loft, it does get really warm. The other thing is, I'm more likely to go completely nocturnal when when it starts getting this hot. So like, I'm like, it's already getting warm. I should go to sleep. I haven't been awake all that long. All right, I think we're on the Union. They won the initiative and get to take the first turn. This is, I believe, a low light turn. I don't think we're going to have any engagement, so I'm not going to worry about the rules for that right now. Play as long as I can until the glare gets too bad. I think as the sun slides that way, we're going to get some light there. It doesn't look bad. Some of it has to do with the fact that the map is completely matte, which is just good. Unsurprisingly, I lied. Kilpatrick launches a cav charge against the rear of what's now Stuart's cav. I've integrated Jenkins into it, I believe. It's because everything's all connected now. So there's no Jenkins leader on the board anymore. This isn't going to cause any cav charge modifiers. The modifiers happen if you're attacking undisrupted infantry or only disrupted infantry, neither of which is the case here. So we just get normal combat, but it's probably all mounted. Interesting result, which shows the impact of the dice. This was the die roll, 14 for the Confederates, 9 for the Union. Not a huge difference, right? You know, within the boundaries of what's kind of reasonable to see. Sure. You might end up with, like an 18-point difference, right? On the worst possible die roll. But that is a 1 in 1,000 occurrence, you know? But this is well within reasonable ranges. Yet, the modifiers were, I'm trying to remember, I think +9 for the Union in total, which are fairly heavy. End up giving them a higher die roll here. But that higher die roll meant, no it didn't. I fucked it. Yeah, I forgot to put the -9 in play. Okay, no problem. Yeah. So that ended up meaning a 2 casualty differential. I got to take these cohesion hits off here. I counted the 14 and did that, and I'm like, oh, I do 2 cohesion hits per. No, that's at -9. That drops down below a 7, so I did no damage. So again, I lied. Yeah, this is a reasonable result, and that means we've got a differential where the loser's going to have to make a morale check, which means they probably want to retreat. Most of the exciting stuff is done. Still got a direct command here for 1st Division of Sickles, which I didn't see any particular reason I want to do anything exciting with. Got the operational movement. I got the Chit Cup with some Union units left in it. But let's go over what major happened, and maybe that'll give me enough energy to finish up the turn. But I'm just like, it's hot. One nice thing, the sun never did what it was doing earlier in the year. I guess it's getting high enough in the sky that by the time the angle gets where it's supposed to, whatever, you know, I don't know. Anyhow, what do we got? We got Early coming on over here, squeezing Kilpatrick, which is not good. Or Kirkpatrick, I can't tell. Kilpatrick, I think. Stuart has formed a little cordon around here between roads and protecting himself a bit as best as he can. Kilpatrick's not in a pleasant place, let's just put it that way. As you see, Rhodes is coming up the roads. Wadsworth, and I had some issues timing-wise where I fucked shit up. So like I pulled Wadsworth and I'm like, oh, he doesn't want to do anything. No, he wanted to withdraw. It's just hard to remember what you want to do. And it's one of the problems with a chip pull game or any impulse game, as opposed to the standard I go, you go. With the I go, you go, I can take a turn, I can walk away, I can assess what I want to do much more easily when I'm moving all my pieces at once. Here, I'm more likely to make mistakes. In this case, it's a mistake that I had already said, I'm not going to make this mistake, and then I did it. Anyway, nothing too big happened when I pulled Anderson. I'm like, I don't want to be outflanked, and I had already decided this. So Wadsworth pulled back. I think the Kilpatrick attack was just a blunder. It looks like I'm trying to win for the Confederates here. Not surprising. Beaufort got to run before any of the Confederates got to move. It's not a big deal because Heath is really, really slow moving under his R&R rule orders. He has to spend another point to actually start recovering. And he's not going to get much back. He's going to get like one set of things. Well, no, because there are actual night turns that he can operate in. And Anderson, you know, the outflank's not that impressive now. It's just positioning against this Hare Ridge location, which doesn't look all that defensible when faced with this amount of force. Sure, I got, you know, 2 more divisions of First Corps coming up, but and some artillery reserves. But I'm going to have to figure out a way to defend here, or else Anderson's going to still come around and sweep me. I need another corps. Anything else happen of excitement? I don't think so. I haven't moved the rest of First Corps yet. It's just sort of trickling its way in. And the only other thing I think I moved, because the Chitpul Cup has been giving me, you know, non-entities, whatever. Pickett got to move a hex. He's inactive. Problem here is, what's his name? Humphreys went inactive. Probably not a big deal. We're probably going to be camping for the night in position of one another. But yeah. I think I'm gonna break. I just don't have the energy to keep going. Well, nocturnal or not, I'm still a habit of sleeping during the morning. And unfortunately, I slept through the coolest part of the day, and now I'm up for the hottest part of the day. Now, part of that's fine. In about a half hour, it's time for raid, but I got a half hour. I didn't sleep the entire time. I also listened to a podcast thing up until now, and it just ended, and I'm like, I really don't feel like just sitting on my ass any longer. We don't just drop things in the cup. Now, Greg had no choice here, but his turn ended up getting burned by the Confederates, winning an initiative roll. He only gets to move 2 hexes. Otherwise, you know, he's Cav, man. He would have been able to make some decent progress to supporting Kilpatrick up there, at least giving him a way out. And it's looking worse. That means we're out of both chit cups. I still have one last thing, which is this. Now, I could have burned that if I had realized Greg was the only thing left, but it's kind of hard to know. I mean, you can look, but it's kind of hard to make the decision that you're going to take that effort, because there are piles that are that are shorter than others, but some of those shortness have to do with this, some of them have to do with what's in here. It would have been hard to realize right away that the only remaining thing that could be in the cup was Greg. Yeah, and it could still have ended up happening. I would have only been able to reduce its chances by a little bit. Yeah, so the thing is, the Union has the initiative, so they have this slight advantage. So had I known, it would have been worth defending him. But I was drawing from a cup with Greg in it for a long time, right? Without having done anything along those lines. After quite a few overlong trips around the table and back, I moved this thing into the closet there. That obscures my other games if I want to go show them, but this gives me a little path I can walk through, because I'm finding myself again and again checking what's going on here. In this case, it's because Hood, enough light there for now. Hood is squirming his way through, and what I thought was some kind of big outflank, well, kind of at best, it's getting me, I think somewhere around here. Kind of at best, I could curve down this way into this morass here, but the problem is, First Corps, well, who's the other one? I don't remember who the other commander is. I'll know him as McLaws. Yeah. Doesn't stick in my mind. He's coming around this way. So I kind of would like to keep my corps together. And pushing through the center here seems a more likely means to do so. I'm still going to have some kind of traffic jam happening just because I split my corps so that it's going around both directions. But yeah, that's definitely becoming a pain in the ass up there. Now he's going to be on the map on the next turn, and now I have to check. Wait, because I might not be allowed closely enough. 3120 is where the Union is, and again, I don't have a marker on here. That's all the way down here. That's the closest one of those. And then the other would be up here, and I'm outside of the 2 hex range of that, I know. So, what I did is legal. It's really a pain. Oh, and I cheated by the rules with Johnson. Like I said last time, I don't know what to do because he couldn't have been in the hex. Like, the way that Rhodes is deployed isn't the combat formation that it appears on the operational map. It's a road column going off. He couldn't have appeared on the road. Like, Johnson wouldn't have been able to be in the hex that he was in. I moved him back 1 hex. I moved him back a 2nd hex. That 2nd hex also would have included some of Rhodes's units, so that I think was fair. That allowed me to not have to switch direction or anything like that and march along a little further so that I can come down down another road. Maybe in danger of this one division here, which is trying to make its way to the end of the line anyhow. And the sharpshooters point over here, holding the flank. They're sort of like calves, so they're kind of cool in that way. A lot of weird shit on my floor. Oh, this is a piece of nasty tape. Hot for tea, so I've switched to water, which is a good thing. But I throw a little bit of lemon juice in it to make it. The water here tastes wonderful, but the lemon juice helps convince me that I'm not just drinking water or something. I don't know. But I need to refill my pipe. I need to get more water. Water goes down quicker than tea does by far. But the idea of a diuretic, in this heat is... I certainly did it. and do it, but not appealing. Phew. Okay, done with everything except weather. Should have done the weather, right? All right. What does that involve? Well, let's talk about things that I just put on the board. I put Caldwell on the board. He's got a small little division. He just finished resting. In fact, all the Union units have completed their rest except for Buford, who hasn't started one yet. We got First Corps and the artillery making its way up to Harris Ridge. It doesn't look like a pleasant situation, but it wasn't historically either. I think what we're going to see is something kind of like Gettysburg, but happening a day happening earlier in the day. Like we're positioned at evening instead. So everything's been accelerated by the Union movements, which means the Confederate get less victory points in the bank, if that matters for anything. Third Corps didn't really change much, and nothing really changed over here. We got Hood coming on the board as well. And anything else of interest? Not really. Let me roll a couple of dice for weather. If I can find a couple of dice. I start feeling kind of sick to my stomach in the heat. We're standing and doing stuff. So that's going to be an 8. An 8 over on the weather table is no change normally. We've probably got a -1 right now. The 7 o'clock, so that would put it at 7, but still no change. And I will put the dice over here to indicate I'm slipping into another turn. Yeah. And I think it's time for me to go play Raid. I'm sure I've eaten up that half hour that I had available to me. Did I take anything? This could come off. This is the unit I put on the board. Probably some Confederate stuff can come off as well. No, unless that's Hood. Yeah, that's Hood. But yeah, it's. I'll look for something that I actually can use, like something that I can use in the game, as opposed to the counters for the variants. Yeah, because that's a variant counter over there. I don't know. I don't know how much influence the operational game has had on things. It has changed the setup, right? It has created a situation that is not Gettysburg. I'm okay with that. What I'm not cool about is that I don't feel like, and I would not have bought this for the tactical game alone, and I don't feel like the operational game is rich enough, complete enough, possible to reasonably generate a historical Gettysburg. I mean, it is possible. You just fuck around enough, But the Union was capable of moving much further, even with the rules that slow them down. The Confederates get a whole bunch of victory points, even in just resting part of one day raiding. That makes the whole nature of the battle very, very different if I play by the victory point. If I pay attention to the victory points that are there. Instead, they should start off with a penalty of victory points that they have to accumulate, but there should be other things going on as well. So I'm going to just draw it as a kind of a blank, because when it comes down to it, it's winning the battle that's important, right? Sure, what the Confederates were doing was of value to them. They should get something for it, but it shouldn't be at the same level. Like if they essentially lose Gettysburg at any level, certainly the level at which they lost it historically, whatever they collect shouldn't be enough to give them a win. And it seems that if they followed the historical pattern, they almost certainly would have a win. They would not have to fight a battle. If they could leave the map, they would. All right, here we are at, what is it? Going into the 8:30 p.m. turn. Visibility is getting really low. Nothing's going to happen. Commands were issued. Heath has been shifted over to his R&R. I actually put Buford on R&R. That'll allow him to move a little bit and get out of the way. He can't really be helped by anyone because he's independent. If I had a Union overall cav commander, and maybe I can set one up or something, because I have officially a cav corps, but I don't have a commander for that corps. So I don't know how that would work out. I don't recall any rules regarding that. Mainly, March mode is as effective and doesn't cost me command points for almost everybody as any other kind of, as any direct commands are, until I get into contact with someone. So in the case of the Union Kilpatrick, I felt like I had to give him direct command. That allows me to get out of dodge quicker, more than anything else, if I win an initiative roll. Unfortunately, I burned all my points. I had a lot of points. I had 5 total, 4 for Reynolds, 1 for Meade, that I could have put to grab the initiative. But again, I don't really think the Confederates are going to go in there. So, and who would know better than me? Buford's not that beaten up. Heath is the one who really needs it. And there are some night turns before we hit the interphase when encampment has to be done and whatnot. Come back up while it's still cool. Dawn has come and whatever. I'm just finding this so much of a struggle. I used up all the Confederate chips in direct command in the cup. Heath inched forward a little bit. Unfortunately, who is this? This is Hood. His swinging over. I timed things wrong. I was stupid, basically. You should have had him in the over here. If he's going to march, that way I could have coordinated him with these other forces. He ended up kind of running into some problems there. I also finally sent Longstreet back to go get Pickett. He should have done it last turn. He didn't. Over here, a lot of the excitement is going on. Kilpatrick managed to pull away as Stuart and Early fill in the gap here. So we've got like a Confederate line built here, and then another big Confederate force here. Now, numerically, a Confederate corps versus a Union corps, the Union corps is in trouble. 2 Confederate corps versus 1 Union corps, that's really not nice. So I'm expecting the next day to start off kind of intensively. There is a fair amount of Union cav on the board. Of course, Stuart's on the board too, so, whatever they do. Of course, the cav isn't particularly useful on offense against infantry, but it can serve its defensive purpose pretty well. But anyway, like I said, I start playing a little bit. I move a few of the pieces, a fair amount, I've got this tedious chore of going through the cup. That's pretty much all that's left for the Union until I get to, I'll force myself to go. It means getting another pipe. It's like, this is the only time of day when it's cool enough. Well, listen, nighttime. But, It's still cool enough, but I'm like, I just want to go to sleep or something. I don't care what. I just don't want to play. I come to another place where the coordination of the maps is causing issues. Johnson could have moved down as far as 26, 27, something like that, I think. Unfortunately, 26, 27 is here, which means I'm going to be deploying from here next turn. Even though, like, if there was a Union unit here, I would deploy in this hex for battle over on the operational board. And again, it's just, I could have continued moving further west, but I feel like putting a threat on 3rd Corps makes more sense than trying to coordinate across, 3 different corps to try to hit over here. I think that, who is it, McLaws, who's going to be coming in back here, it looks like, is able to do a pretty good number in terms of degrading the Union position up on Hare Ridge. I don't feel like they work correctly. So 2521 is this road coming here. That's where I'd like McLaws to come in. I've got movement. I look at 2521 and it doesn't have a road going off map. 2520 does. That's the road I'm poised to take. Okay, let's look again. 2520 is this little trail here, this Mummersburg Road. It doesn't exist over here on the operational map. This is problematic because this is where I want to be coming in, and it just doesn't exist. 2524 is the next road after this one, and that's over here. And, sure, I could move all the way there. I think there's just a misprint, and I'm going to try to figure out a way to come in on that 2521, because that's a nice secondary road there. But I don't know what to do to make it work when the two maps don't align. I think we're pretty much at the end of the line here. 3rd Corps has pushed forward. Pender got like a huge move, which is a big deal because he has some units that were trailing and having trouble getting off the hill. They were stuck in the woods and whatnot. More problematic though is Robinson here went inactive for the Union. That's going to be an expense that I pretty much have to take care of. There's a possibility the Confederates might attack at night. I don't really want to look up the night rules. I did try to look up low light rules to see what's up. It basically affects the zone of control, zone of influence, line of sight, stuff like that. It doesn't affect movement as far as I can tell. I don't remember it doing so, but I wanted to try to find it. There's not like a single place where it talks about the light effects. They're like jumbled into various places where they have impact. I didn't see anything in movement. The artillery reserve moving up into place up here as well. But, I kind of want to cover this gap, so I'm hoping the 1st Corps can cover about to here. Beaufort can move his cav there. It's not enough, there's no question. And then on the other side, again, there's just not enough Union. Sure, there's a lot of cav, but 1 Corps is not going to hold off what's going on here. The one thing that's kind of in my favor is that the 2nd Corps is split up. Now, I've got to bring some units on the board still. I've got to do recovery and whatnot. But, yeah. In terms of cohesion recovery, first of all, there's erasing the boxes, whatever. That's actually the morale recovery, but the same thing. It's the same effect, the R&R. But the R&R, Heath's under full R&R, so he gets to recover cohesion. The problem with that is you can't recover your first cohesion hit, which means I can't just go by, oh, there's a counter under that, I need to fix it. I have to paw through them all. A lot of them only have 1, some of them have 2. That's fine, but it's just annoying, that's all. Again, another little mechanical aspect to the game. Does it really add that much? I don't know. It was a big deal in Banish All Their Fears over there, that units couldn't recover their first hit. But feels somewhat less of one here, I think. I don't know. I think it's your first hit on either side. So if you get knocked over to half and you take another hit, you can't recover that. But I'm not sure. The rules aren't very clear on that. And yeah, I think the only thing, degradation, weather, and placing units. The weather cooled down from hazy to clear. And then we have McLaws and Johnson coming on. Johnson barely on the map at all. Again, he easily could have moved on further. And McLaws using a road that's not on the operational map, but is on the tactical map. And that'll put us into the first of the nighttime turns. See, the thing is, there's a couple of dark turns that are fairly long, and then we hit the nighttime reorganization, where nothing really can happen, but some recovery and whatnot can happen at night. I'm not expecting anyone to engage. We have, guys in pretty close proximity that feels uncomfortable to me. I don't know if I did something wrong that got them there to camp like that, but I guess I could fire artillery at each other and bombard each other, but the artillery's just coming up now. So I don't know. It definitely feels too close a range to just be camping out for the night. That's all. That if it is an error by me, and I suspect it is, it has to do with me not really internalizing the zone of control, zone of influence, and all those kind of rules completely. I have their effect on movement and whatnot, but the real question is, should I be bombarding? I think. It's hard to tell, though, because these guns just moved up. These guys aren't in place yet. There might be a really nasty surprise at the beginning of the morning with some pretty hefty bombardments happening at close range, whatever. But for actual rifle fire and whatnot, I think it's a one hex range in this. You have to engage. You have to be attacking. There's no fire combat other than the artillery. So yeah, they're setting up for a bloodbath as far as I can tell. And these guys aren't doing much better. They're coming down off their ridge saying, yeah, we want to get closer. We want to be ready for tomorrow, which may be an indication that the Union needs to fall back, needs to give it some space. But this is sort of the best defensive terrain there is facing in this direction that's left. I gave up some pretty good terrain up here. And here, the Union does not have good terrain. But I feel like I need to kind of seal off the Confederates to prevent them from completely outflanking me here. I may just, maybe just fall way back, Good. But then that initial push comes against Cemetery and, not that it's the game or anything, because terrain itself doesn't matter except if you choose to defend it. And it looks so tiny comparatively. It looks like, whoa, how can I defend a line there? That's just like a little bump, compared to these massive ridges up here that feel. But I don't have many troops, and maybe I do need to fall back on that. I don't know. Oh, I completed a quick command phase here, and Meade ended up inactive. Yay, Meade. That's painful for him to reaccumulate the points to activate himself. I'm not sure Army Command can go inactive. Yeah, I believe so. Let me check. Reactivation, self-activation is only 2. No, see, this is weird. Reactivation, self-activation. Yeah. So, a wing commander activating himself costs more than the Army commander. But he's got to accumulate a couple of points and spend them on that. He'll probably, get them during the night. It's not that unlikely. It's just whatever. Reynolds, on the other hand, got a bunch of points. Got like 4. He devoted them all to sickles for next morning. He's within range, barely, tracing through the roads and whatnot, and not worrying as much about, yeah, but I got an inactive marker there I got to deal with. See, this is the thing. It's hard to remember everything that's going on. I got an inactive here on Robinson. That means First Corps, which I do want moving, has to spend, I believe it's 2 points. I can check. Because they're different amounts, again, based on who it is. Okay, I don't have reactivation on here. There it is. 4 for self, 2 for division, yeah. So the Corps commander has to spend a lot on his self, just like Reynolds does. But Meade does not. He gets away cheap, I believe. Like I got this 4-2 on here. Reactivation, self-activation, yeah, for an Army commander, but not from a wing commander. So there's sort of this expectation that the wing commander is going to have more points because in this scenario, because he takes points away from Meade. Meade becomes a 1-rated general, but Reynolds is a 4. So that's kind of makes sense for that, but it's like, yeah, but there's other wing commanders, and I don't know how it all fits together. I certainly don't think you want more than 1 wing commander on the board. First of all, you pay victory points, and secondly, you're going to be paying for it in other ways as well. And I think 2 commanders is enough to cover most of this board. I mean, take a look. Reynolds is over here, and he's got Sickles in command without having to move around and do anything. Sure, you might be able to make an argument for, well, yeah, but you're covering maybe half the board, for there being 3 different commanders on the board at the same time. But doing so would further reduce Meade and would basically make it down to 2 commanders anyway, at various costs. I mean, basically Meade would give up command of the Army and just direct the 2 wing, give some additional slight direction. Nobody spent on initiative, which I have not rolled yet. Lee didn't get as many points. He got like 2 or something like that. Longstreet reactivated Pickett. May have given some points to like Hood to make sure he gets to continue going or something. I don't know. I can't recall all of it. One thing that I've been thinking about, though, is the nighttime turn, which this is going to be one. I feel like under full dark, it is really hard to move on anything other than roads. I mean, if you've ever tried, look, I live in a city area, and most people live probably in a fairly populated area where there's sort of a glow of light over most of everything. But when you start wandering out of the out of the glow of civilization, and I can almost guarantee you that everywhere on this map, except maybe Gettysburg, who knows, I mean, they're sure not going to have the kind of light cities do now, right? You think about a few candles in each house or something like that. It's not going to create any kind of big glow, and there might be some street lights or whatever. I don't know. I don't know how big a town it was. It doesn't look too big, but you're not going to have the kind of brightness that we just put out in the modern world. And sure, along primary, secondary roads, I totally buy that you could move full rate on them, but it feels like overland should not be anywhere near as easy. Now, probably not as hard as I saw when I played the Austerlitz scenario. Well, I don't have an Austerlitz box, but the CWB game Austerlitz has night turns, and I played with the night rules for that. And basically, if you're going off-road, you roll a die and see where you wander. I don't disagree that that's possible. It is quite possible. I've gotten lost at night in the woods, or one of the biggest ones was on the dunes in Oregon. It's really hard to tell where the fuck you are and what's going on. And, of course, they probably have some navigation capabilities and compasses and stuff like that. But still, it's hard to deal with. But on the other hand, if there are fires up on the hill or something like that, you can use them to guide your direction a little better. So I don't feel like that basically turned into sort of a random walk if you try walking at night. I'm not sure that that's the best way, but I can think of a few ways you could make this game penalize you for marching in the dark. And even with a full moon, it can be kind of bad, right? One of which is you could just give units less movement points. It doesn't work as well with the roads and whatnot. Double the cost of everything that's not a road. Okay. I'm not really convinced that trails are necessarily all that easy. I don't know how good the trails are. If they're fairly decent and well-maintained trails, they still can include things that are going to really hinder you, right? A downed tree, a place where the trail is kind of obscured and you fall into a ditch, shit like that. I don't know how much that's going to affect the whole unit. A couple of guys fall in, and then they're like, "Hey, don't go here. Joey's down there with a broken leg." But certainly on the overland, it feels like you'd have to work a lot harder in moving. And I could see something along those lines. I'm not going to do it because there's nothing in the rules that I'm aware of that does this. But, some of the movement here is going to be of that nature. Now, some of it, if you're just repositioning your line a little bit and whatnot, you could say, well, you could do that. Yeah, you could do that at half movement rate or whatever. So one of the other options would be to fuck around with the activity roll to reduce the activity. That's actually not a bad idea because commanders were kind of loath to move their forces at night. But again, I don't think it would apply if you're in march order. It might apply if you're trying to use roads for something else. Again, I don't think I'm going to do anything with this, but it's just like some food for thought that shit's happening that I don't really buy that's going on here. Most battles don't involve a lot of repositioning over the course of the days. Gettysburg is definitely one where this can happen. Austerlitz is another. Trying to think, there are other multi-day battles, but I don't know that they allow for as much room for maneuvering about. Whereas here, there definitely is space for the armies to shift a bit. All right, that's it for now. I gotta go raid some more. The heat is bad. I went out and tried to do some yard work today. Kind of like, light stuff. Just trimming weeds with my, not with my weed whacker, but with my, got a kind of hedge trimmer thing. Some of them need it. The blackberries get nasty. And not going on the hill, just kind of reaching for stuff. And I'm just like, oh, it's too fucking hot, man. It's like almost too hot to play with the hose and just water my one tree that I'm trying to keep alive this year. But yeah, and I went downstairs. Before I did that, I went downstairs and thought about playing some 18xx. I'm also fiddling around with the idea of reading aloud, not like I do with my rules, but yeah, it's been something I considered doing for a long time, like maybe before I even got a camera. Was that there might be some people who are into that, and I realized the Tolstoy book I have actually has no copyright on Tolstoy, obviously, but on the translation either. So it shouldn't get a copyright strike or anything like that. Most of the things I've wanted to read have been within the stupid period that copyrights were extended for so long. Some of them I'm not going to live long enough to get to. Although, any reasonable copyright, like I think one of them's from the 40s or something like that. Any reasonable copyright rules would have allowed that to be used. But just reading isn't really fair use. So yeah. But Tolstoy, I think I can get away with. There's some stuff that I know was kind of on the edge and that's getting there. The one that I was thinking of was Dunsany, but I didn't have any Dunsany. I tried to grab some online on my tablet or whatever, and I just did not enjoy reading off the tablet at all. So we won't do that. Nothing too exciting happening so far. The Union's been, the Confederates won the initiative. They actually forced the Union to go, which was just a mistake. But the Union's gotten a number of counters that don't reflect on anything on the board, really. But the Confederates got Heath, who's in R&R. He got a shitty movement allowance. But while I was doing that, I realized, wow, some of these units that have cohesion hits are artillery. Did I, cheat? I did. I didn't pay attention to that. So I might have recovered cohesion from them. But actually, they have an easier mechanism for recovering, a different one. And this was the, I forgot how it worked. I know it doesn't work quite the same as for infantry. So those were taken from losses in combat, not from ammo expenditure, but the two are the same. If you have a cohesion hit, you can resupply during any friendly impulse. The unit may move up to half its movement allowance, must move out of enemy zone of control, zone of influence, flip to its committed side, and is marked. I didn't flip it to committed, but I'm not going to commit them because they have a resupply marker on them. And it can't do anything firing-wise. If it still has it at the end of the turn, it loses a cohesion hit, as long as I have a wagon nearby, which I do. Unlike TSS, which handles individual wagons, I don't think Line of Battle did. If it did, they were handled relatively abstractly. In TSS, you had all these divisional wagons and whatnot, or at least corps wagons. I don't think it went down to the divisional level. But they would carry a specific amount of small arms and I think artillery ammo. Although I might be mistaken, the artillery ammo might have only been at the artillery park and or train. And when they got used up, they would have to go back to the main supply train to gather up their ammo. I seem to remember all the artillery running back to the main supply train, which actually is kind of a nice mechanism because the Confederates used artillery artillery units, batteries, whatever, to haul ammo up and then fed it into other units that were on the line. I don't know if the rules allowed that, but it feels closer to that kind of thing, where the artillery is constantly moving back and forth between the main supply train. Here it's not like that. Every division has its own wagon. That wagon impacts your capability to do artillery supply. I think it also impacts your capability of doing regular cohesion recovery. I know it affects build, the ability to build entrenchments. That's something I should be considering, except that I don't really think I'm going to be holding this ground for very long. I kind of want to get somebody up to Cemetery Hill because there's no victory points for that. So, no, but it does dominate the landscape and it looks really important. And that's the whole thing. Like, building a Cemetery Hill line is looking really likely for the Union at this point. Somewhat ugly situation is I'm having difficulty sometimes discerning, and this may just be I have like some difficulty discerning some colors, blues and greens in particular, but some difficulty in discerning something like this, which is an elevation line from a stream. Now, you got streams that move through the edge of things, but you got other streams. So I think what it is that these kind of the smaller streams that look kind of like the elevation lines to me are always through the middle of a hex. The bigger ones are not. Now that forces me to look here to see, and we have major creeks and minor creeks. And can I tell those apart? Again, you know, it's really tough. I see something like this. This I'm pretty sure is a major creek. I think this may be a minor creek. And they're just not that different. They're just not that different. And then this, again, a minor creek. It's really hard, you know, and it has to do with the choices of blending the colors and all that, but also simply the quantity of terrain that they're putting in without a lot of distinguishing markings. They don't want any, you know, Barber doesn't want anything to destroy the beauty of his map or whatever as they see it. But it's really hard to portray the amount of information that he's trying to get across in this map and not make it either garish or indistinguishable. The first of the night turns, the 10 p.m. turn is over. Weather didn't change. Recovery, Buford slowly recovering. Heath has recovered as much as he can. I haven't removed these, although I took the reason for them away. Let's take a look. There's not a whole hell of a lot that's happening, you know, outside of what's going on up there. So let's look at the outer rim first. Caldwell has moved significantly far for someone who's under R&R rules still, right? Over here we got Huey, Dewey, and Louie moving over here. Nothing else. For the Confederates, Pickett made a decent move. Longstreet's on the map now. He joined Lee. Imboden's coming down, protecting that wagon. I'm going to keep him in the Cashtown area for now at least. But if I get a feeling that I'm safer on the board, I think I'll move there. I don't see a reason to have the supply wagon, the main army's supplies kicking around, you know, with just some cav defending it. That doesn't sound wise. Now, to the main stuff. Oh, all right. So let's take a look. Buford went early with his recovery phase and didn't move very far. You can see First Corps shifted way over, but Third Corps is shifted in line, and that's part of why First Corps moved where it did. So Hill moved most of his force here. Heath's still over here. In part because he's recovering, and like with Buford, that meant that his movement happened before these sort of road movement phases. On the other hand, First Corps sneaking up and outflanking. Who is this? This is Wadsworth here now. And making this position just look untenable. And I got Hood coming up behind him. Anderson, I thought he was getting an outflank on, and that's part of why Wadsworth moved over. And then, boom, here comes McLaws' division right up there. And then similarly over here, well, let's talk about what happened first. The Union decided to pull their cav back, and that exposes a possibility for the Confederates to advance in that direction. Stuart may do that. I think I want to keep Second Corps together in fighting shape, whatever that may mean. But Second Corps got Johnson here outflanking. Now, part of the problem with this was the Third Corps was looking at defending either in front of or in a swamp. In a swamp is terrible. In front of isn't much better. It would take my retreat opportunities away, and it was obvious I was going to be outflanked. So I stretched back a little bit. But again, it's not really looking tenable to me. We may see an exodus of the Union from the positions that they've taken so far, simply because I don't see how I can hold against, the number of corps that are facing me. Certainly not such a broad front as this or this. I'm pretty sure Sickles is going to fall back. I don't see how Doubleday and Reynolds can hold this position. Historically, see, this is the weird thing. Historically, I knew First Corps knew 11th was coming on. Of course, 11th was covering up here, but I don't feel like they were facing. First of all, Longstreet wasn't on the board in the first day, and he's going to be there on that first day. The other thing is, Confederate troops have managed to move up, and I don't see anything that prevents this, into a position that's like a launching off position. And it's especially dangerous right now, or especially possible right now, because it's too dark to shoot. There's no artillery here. That guy's a little questionable. He's in a zone of influence. He paid an extra movement point for it. That's, I think, the extent of the effect. I couldn't be using... I'm not sure if I could use march movement. I was under march orders, but I had enough movement I could have gotten there under normal orders. But I may need to just look that sucker up, what the impacts of march orders are. And I think they're not allowed to even enter a zone of influence. Well, there's nothing here. But this is the march orders area. And so this is the thing listed as march orders, but this is where you pay for it. And it kind of affects some of what it is, but it may not be everything about it, which is kind of the problem with this rule set, is that there's stuff scattered in weird places. Like, not really all that weird, but it's not necessarily where you're going to look for it. So I look under a zone of influence, and I look, and I'm like, okay, there's a cost. Low light turns reduces the zone of influence. Weather reduces and affects it. I'm not seeing anything under zone of influence that allows, that prevents anything. I know I can't move into a zone of control with units in march order. In fact, I can't do it with anything other than direct or attack or reserve, I believe. Defend might be able to do it. Which means then I look around to see if there's anywhere else, and I just can't think of anywhere I could find it. So I don't think there's any rule that prevents me from like slipping right up close to the enemy within artillery range, essentially, under march orders, which feels a little weird, but as far as I can tell, that's what it is. Again, it's a painful rule book to cope with, to find things. But this situation may be such that the Union just cannot hold these positions, and I may have to fall back again. The problem is, look, Hare Ridge is not a bad place to defend. In fact, it's sort of the best that I had available. Like, Whistler's was good. Hare is as good. Seminary is not a good place to defend facing this way. It's fine facing that way. Which means, what do? Fall all the way back to Cemetery Hill? And will I be pursued? You know, how quickly is the Confederacy going to be able to launch an attack up there and really get kind of control over things? And all because of what? All because the Union units moved on the board too quickly. Of course, in terms of victory points, that deprived the Confederates of hundreds of victory points, enough that they could have won the game by the operational rules basically without doing anything. As it stands, they're under no compunction to attack if I use those victory points. They don't seem fair. They don't seem like they're going to generate Gettysburg, but I've been on that bent for a while. Anyway, heading into, I guess, the 1 a.m. turn. Turns, take more time at night. It's the same kind of thing as CWB uses, making the night, putting a bunch of stuff in the way for night rules in CWB. Here, they extend the time on them so you don't go as far. I think that works fine. Do have some question how much you'd know about enemy movements, but the chit pull kind of, and the orders mechanisms and die rolls and impulses and all that kind of mitigates some of the foreknowledge. So like, the Confederates went with these guys first, and then the Union pulled back, and it's like, oh, gosh, what's up there? It's Tuesday morning. It's been Tuesday morning for a while, but coming to the realization of how slowly I'm moving through this sucker, and it kind of goads me into, hey, fucking get some more playtime in. So, yeah, before it gets too hot, I'm gonna try to get a little bit more in. I don't know if this is just of the pattern, right? Like, I'm not really tired, but I should be getting to sleep, but it's like, yeah, but if I stay awake until like 9 or 10 a.m., it's before 6 right now. It's still pretty light out. I might be able to get another turn in and be able to steal, so that I'm getting, especially since there's not much happening yet. I'm so worried about when this game starts, going full bore, though. With TSS, as an example, early on, turns take about 20 minutes each and are 20-minute turns. Here, turns are an hour each, but they're taking me that hour. So, we're talking about at least as much of a commitment as with TSS. Plus, I've got extra days possible. For the Confederates, most of the units moving in march orders. Lee had some points. I've been collecting up points on both armies for tomorrow. Just get some better, results ahead of time, because I don't need to spend the points for what's going on right now. Meade had to spend to recover himself and to recover Slocum. Not worried about the divisions yet, because they're not going anywhere and they don't generate anything that accumulates. Reynolds had a fair amount of points. Didn't he? No, he only had a couple. Actually, Meade got a good roll and got like 4 points. Reynolds ended up giving Sickles and Doubleday points with the intention of them reforming their position. What I think Doubleday is going to do is he's going to pull Robinson back, and Sickles is going to fall back as well, with the Cav doing something. Now Sickles may end up falling back this way with the Cav kind of defending in front of Gettysburg, simply because I want to control the important terrain around Cemetery Hill, which may just be this hill structure here, as somewhat more defensible. But we'll see. One problem with this system, the pulsed system, is I can't look and say, oh, I mean I can because of the march orders, right? But in some cases you can't look and say, oh, I want to move Unit A before I move Unit B to make sure that I can get where I want to get to. But I've got problems because the way the movement rules work in this, the way the roads work and everything for this system, and it's correct, it's just, it's problematic in terms of actually playing the game. It's another impediment to making the game easy to play, even though it's historically accurate. If I have one unit that I choose to move first and it's on the road, it'll block the next unit. You kind of don't have that kind of situation where there's not pulsing, because you can pretty much figure out which unit does need to move first. And I don't know, depending on how much screw up you allow people to withdraw and whatever, they might move some units and realize, oh wait, I'm going to block someone else. But you kind of can't do that here because you make some die rolls and some facets come into play. Of course, some people play the, hey, you touched it, you moved it, kind of rolls. I don't generally like to do that, simply because I'm almost never versed enough in a game to feel incredibly comfortable with my decisions. So I want to be able to withdraw mistakes that become obvious to me as I'm making them, when possible. That's just me. And, that's not just because I solo. When I play opposed, I'm usually not playing against people who, I'm not an expert at the game, and I'm usually playing against people who are even less expert than I am. So quite often, I'm allowing even more latitude to my opponents in terms of trying to correct errors and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, definitely had situations where it's like, fuck, I'm screwing up. Do you mind if I take this back? And yeah, usually it's that kind of friendly game. All right. Have we gotten through the command phase? Yes, we have. I've got a problem with Caldwell here. Everyone else is on the operational map, but I chose to put him here, which allowed him some additional movement, and may allow him, to continue making additional movement for quite some time. But he's not in command of Hancock, and he's not an independent unit. They don't have rules for units becoming independent. It may make some up, as I've said before, but he's not able to withdraw from R&R because he doesn't have a command point available. Whereas everyone who's in command would have command points available. They actually don't need to, because they're sitting on the operational map and will be forced into encampment, which my interpretation of the rules is you can't be in R&R, you can't be in any orders when you're encamped. Like, you can go into R&R, but you can't generate your points from it, because encampment basically voids everything. So since you're forced into encampment if you're on the operational map, that's kind of interesting. But there's nothing like that on the tactical map. Confederates get a couple of chit pulls in their favor. I mean, they're not really chit pulls. They get a couple of die rolls in their favor. They take the chit pull. What do they do with them? Well, one of them is Anderson shifted around a little bit to put a little bit more pressure even. This is just, making it all the more obvious Robinson's got to get the hell out of Dodge. But otherwise, Stuart moved his cav forward in a couple of columns here. Mucking around in the woods that the Union cav is on, that makes room for Early to start marching over and connect up with the rest of 2nd Corps there. Which will, of course, put a lot of pressure on Sickles. He also wants to get out of there. We're trying to do a whole turn at once at this point, rather than, I've been doing the command phase, and it's just this painful number of die rolls and thinking and figuring out, and then the actual activations and whatnot at a later point. I don't see a real reason for that at this point. Later on, though, I'm probably not going to be able to do all the activations, because when it starts coming to combats and whatnot, the system is cumbersome there as well. It's just it's a really painful system to play. And I don't know what to compare it to. The version 3 of the NBS had a lot of, I know it was streamlined in a lot of ways, but I felt it was clunkier because in the sense that it requires me to do more calculations and thought, because it more or less forced melee combat, right? Which is something the old NBS and the Viva la Emperor series, we have some of them here. Oh, where? Well, Friedland is one of them. Some of them are buried over there. Both of those rely on something that doesn't feel Napoleonic at all. Feels much more American Civil War, just standing and firing at each other all game long. Which just isn't appropriate. I'm a lot happier with where, again, historically, like how the game relates. I'm a lot happier with what NBS version 3.0 did. However, it became a dead system, unfortunately. Just like CWB became a dead system. Now, I agree CWB should be a dead system. But that there was room for more battles under either RSS or line of battle. And I don't know if they're going to show up. The one exception was Chancellorsville, and I know somebody was actually working on trying to get Chancellorsville for CWB. I have a couple of games on that battle. I don't think I've played any of them. Our initiative's proving to be pretty effective right here. So, forcing Union units to go. As Sickles pulled back, Johnson moved into place to kind of counter that move. Part of Sickles didn't get to move full. They got half movement, so that kind of slowed things down. Otherwise, I'd be down around here or something. I'm not in good terrain at all. This is not where I want to start the next day, but it's where I'm going to start it, unfortunately. And then Robinson's moved back here. Well, McLaws got a massive movement roll, the 1.5 times, and he positioned himself behind Robinson, and that's going to be seriously problematic. We got Hood coming around. I think Anderson's already moved. Not terribly effectively, as far as I can see. The thing is, Pender moved up, like he moved into a line with Pender, but then Pender moved up to challenge, and I have not moved Heath yet, so he's still got some room to gain by. It was kind of impressive that I was able to sling McLaws's wagon this way. Now this is going through zones of influence. I have to pay extra movement and whatnot for it. But again, it doesn't seem like there's anything against you doing this in march orders. You just can't enter a zone of control as far as I can tell. I guess we finish things off with the Union Cav pulling back in a line consistent with Sickles. I think it was, no, Greg didn't get very much movement, but Kilpatrick went first. But he pulled back. I figured this is not a bad line. There's some decent terrain, etc. Sure, I'm facing perhaps an infantry corps, but it looks like it's more Stuart coming my way. I'm not so worried about him. Now, I don't get the advantage of being infantry as dismounted cav, but, you know, he's probably dismounting and fighting me, as opposed to the cav charge rolls. And then over here, Heath moved in to place forward. He's done recuperating, so he got a full move and got up there. We've got, you know, Longstreet here. We've got Pickett on the map. Huey not quite. He looked at the situation and he would have had to stop somewhere back here with the road he was on, so now he's heading down to try and link up with the rest of the Union Cav. I really wish I had a corps commander for the Cav. I have a marker that indicates it's got a corps. I don't know, like, Stuart is very bonused by being a corps commander as far as I'm concerned, because he can store points on the track. The Union doesn't have anyone, but they do have a Cav corps, and so I could form it up and use it, you know. But then, of course, once you attach something to the corps, the way I did with Jenkins, as per the rules, there's no indication that you can create independent units, from what I recall. All right, we do whatever finishing up there is. Degradation, the weather clears a little bit, getting a little cooler. Still not where it was at the beginning of the last day, which is an indication it may just get warmer. We're heading into the night interphase. I'm gonna put that on this video, but I don't feel up to doing it yet. That's gonna require me basically looking through the rules for that and figuring out what happens. I don't think much happens though. I think mainly that's reorganization of destroyed units, and we won't be seeing that. But maybe there's something I'm unaware of. Otherwise, the armies mostly haven't done a damn thing. They've maneuvered about. There was a little bit of a skirmish back here on Whistler's Ridge, I guess. No, it was back here, wasn't it? I don't know. It was somewhere where Buford was able to have really good terrain because the Union Army has some morale hits against it. And without putting units in reserve, which I guess I could have done, I mean, I could have spent points to put some of this shit in reserve or something just to generate back my morale, which feels really, really fucking cheap, right? Like, there's no requirement you actually be near anything to go into reserve. Now, you could see it as some sort of R&R type situation in that case, but it just doesn't make sense. It's like the reserve should be something that's planning on filling in gaps in the line. I don't see any use for reserve quite yet. The Union line is stretched too thin, and the Confederates have got these nasty outflanks going on that, you know, I don't have any reserves, basically. But once a unit gets beaten up or something, there might not be anything better for it to do, especially after it recovers, like if it's lost some counters or whatever. there might not be anything better for it to do than put a division in reserve just to start gaining back points and just leave it there. You know, I don't know. Let's take a side trip before I. And this is one of those, dude, what the fuck are you doing this on here for? But for whatever reason, you know, I was considering, oh, the night moves are going on. And that reminded me of the movie Night Moves, one of very few movies that I kind of vaguely remember, right? I'm not a big movie person in any sense, but at one point, you know, in my life, we watched a fair amount of movies on like HBO, Skinamax, and whatnot. And that one showed several times, as they did during the month back then. I'm sure they still do, where they just repeat the same shows multiple times. But I remember some of the commentary on it. It was Gene Hackman, and I think it was Melanie Griffith's first movie. She was like 17 in it. And awfully cute. But then that reminded me of something else, and I don't remember what the fuck it was, but some comedy sketch where, like, sort of the punchline is that Gene Hackman, what a good actor he was. And I mean, he wasn't a bad actor, so I don't feel like it was like that. But he also didn't strike me as that great an actor either. You know, he seemed like a journeyman, you know, who did his roles and they were good enough. I don't know. Anyway, he was in one of the sub movies, maybe Red October or something like that too. Anyway, this is the kind of crap that just runs through my head sometimes. So I made it downstairs and was pondering the game on my steps down my awesome staircase. But it really is very cool. It's like made out of, it's all wood. I haven't seen a wooden spiral staircase before, and it's bent through like using wet wood and slowly bending it. It's kind of a work of art in some ways. But anyway, what I was thinking was, you know, in some ways this isn't that different from the historical situation, except that the Union, you know, moved on early. The Confederates moved early to respond. Okay, the situation is a little different in that the Confederates got more of their force together at once than they did historically. But then I started thinking about the positioning of the units to come on the board. And so if you think about the historical Battle of Gettysburg, one of the things that always felt weird to me, most of the Union forces come from here. That's not going to happen, right? I mean, there may be a fair amount that are coming up that side of the board and will be sliding up behind Cemetery Hill. And, you know, we're talking about the maps for like TSS, I don't know, because it hits Benner's Hill and whatnot. But it's a much smaller map, right? And even Thunder at the Crossroads has a smaller map, I think. But the forces are mainly coming in from this direction. And the sort of oddball is Doubleday, who comes in from this direction. And it's kind of a surprising position for the Confederates in terms of, like, they're advancing in one direction and all the Union units seem to be coming in from another direction. And then he just comes bumbling in. I think it's just his division. I don't think it's the whole First Corps. We're not going to see anything like that. Most of the Union Army is down here in the South. It had to recuperate and whatnot, and wasn't able to move all that far. The only exception to that, 11th Corps is going to be coming from this side, kind of that Doubleday position. But I think we're going to be getting a lot more coming in from here. I'm not sure. trying to remember. I think some units came in from there. I know some come up this way, and then some come from this way, and we're going to see both of those. But I think we're going to see a heavier weight of Union units coming from this direction instead. And of course, we've got things like Huey, coming on up here. But it just there's some oddness there. I do think though that this is a situation that's, at least for now, even though there's some similarity to what's on the board and the positions to what happened early on in the first, what happened in the first day at Gettysburg, is that I really fear that the Union Army is just going to get wiped here. Like, much more severely than they did historically. Okay, so for the overnight recovery process, we don't go through any of the normal turn type operations. Instead, on the tactical map, basically, if units are flipped over, they get exchanged and into a reduced unit. If two units are flipped over, one of them gets permanently removed, one of them gets reorganized into, I don't even fucking understand it, because I thought it was only out of there. Any brigade containing two reduced side or eliminated units must permanently eliminate one of them and use the remaining steps to build the other back up to strength. Units which were eliminated the previous day's fighting count as reduced size with 8 cohesion hits, i.e. 2 steps remaining. You can't recover a unit fully even through this. Artillery also has a reorganization process. Okay. And none of this affects any morale or anything. I was trying to find what I could, and I thought there was something that said you had to be in sorry, it's fucking hot. It's still daytime. I think it's dipped under 100. It's actually tomorrow, and for the rest of the week, it's supposed to be in the mid 90s, high 90s instead. But that's going to affect things because I'm going to load this video up, and then although I wish I had been able to do it over the days, the previous few days where it was hottest. I'm going to be moving down the basement and playing something there instead. I need a break, both from this and from some of the heat. But anyway, going back to this. Here it says, on-map units always start their day in encamped formation, blah, blah, blah. Somewhere else, though, it says, once you move AM or PM, once you mark AM, you get a penalty for each PM turn that you move. Again, this is just on the operational map. This doesn't cover the whole game, and that's what's weird. But here also, and then it says, in which they move under march orders, they get this penalty, other than to go into encamped formation. Well, what the hell, man? Do I have to spend an action to get out of that and move into an encampment? Do I have to actually move to get into encampment and whatnot? I didn't do that. I'm just giving it to all my units for free. This line seems to indicate that you have to move to get into encampment, but the other says on-map units always start their day in encamped formation. Not the first day, all days. So I think I automatically fall in, and that's how I had been treating it. I don't care either way, to tell you the truth. It makes very little difference. Conceptually, I don't know if I had to spend, like, the big question is, would I have to spend a command point for each division to get them into encampment? And that just feels so fucking wrong. because basically I'd have to leave R&R. But by my reading, again, it doesn't really say, it isn't altogether clear that R&R and encamped are mutually exclusive. There's an indication of such. What it basically says is you're either encamped or you're doing stuff. And R&R, I've interpreted as doing stuff, even though it feels stupid. But yeah, that's pretty fucking annoying. But then, all divisions that move in any night term, regardless of their orders, automatically suffer a -1 DMF to their divisional morale. I definitely cheated on that in the last couple turns. Huey moved, and Imboden moved. Pickett moved, and I have not yet put him on the map. I've got to do that. I haven't done that yet. This is a rule that only applies to the operational side of the game, the operational map. So again, you could be on this map moving at essentially the same rates, maybe a little slower actually in some ways, and you would get penalized, but you're not penalized if you're on board and moving at night. It fucking annoys me. It just totally annoys me. But yeah, I mean, there's a misalignment. There's a lot of fixes that need to be put into place in these rules. Unfortunately, there's very little errata that's like official. But Barber was working on revisions of the rules, and he had gotten through several versions of it. He was up to like, I don't remember what, but like 3 major versions or something like that of the rules that had changed. But none of them were ever released. They were only passed around as a PDF. And maybe it's available somewhere. It's not on BGG. It may be somewhere in, the CSW thread or CSW thread, whatever. Anyway, I'm going to deploy Pickett, and then we're going to load this up. I'll probably have words to say. Definitely will. I just found 2 counters over here, artillery reserve counters. Now, are these Union? I don't fucking know. Because I may not have put all the Union artillery reserve on the map. They don't indicate. As far as I know, the Confederates have the yellow wagons. What do I got here? Yeah, these should have been spread out, I think, to create more of a problem. I had them with the Confederates. They look Confederate. I can't tell the color patterns necessarily apart in some cases. Most of the Union units are kind of bluish, but the wagons aren't. They're pink. Pink looks a lot like some of the colorations on the Confederate units. Of course, the Confederate wagons are yellow, I think. These guys have, no flag or anything on them. I think the Confederate ones have something that looks like a flag, but they're not particularly an artillery wagon. This thing is just too much of a headache. And, that's the problem with Clash of Arms, from what I've heard across the board. I enjoyed Amateurs to Arms was Clash of Arms, wasn't it? Yeah. I enjoyed that a lot. I'm trying to think what else. I feel like there's other things that they've done that I liked, but they are really, really iffy across the board. Oh, I like some of the games of their Civil War operational series. But that's really spotty too. Like the Great Invasion was not that impressive. There were a couple of them that I really had fun with, and some of them were just not fun games and didn't give, like Great Invasion, I feel just didn't give you enough operational flexibility. But maybe that's my lack of historical knowledge or whatever. Anyway, what the fuck? Where did I do Pickett? Oh, there he is. All right. So there's Pickett, probably on the map a little too early. I think Hood was on the map Hood was already on the map before nightfall, so he wasn't an issue. Pickett definitely is getting there a little too early. Again, I really don't care. I really don't care. I'm at the point where I'm like, this may just be too much trouble to play. Especially since, I mean, I'm kind of interested in this situation, right? But it ain't Gettysburg, and I don't feel like the operational game added anything terribly. It just generated a Gettysburg scenario where the Confederates have 100 and something extra victory points and don't need to attack the Union, but have a lot more forces on the board than the Union does. Now, obviously, look, maybe it would have been wisest not to trip the indication of where my units were and stay behind. This was really Merritt was the one reason up here who ended up tripping the visibility issue so that the Confederates were aware that the Union was there. But on the other hand, only if I ignore the fact that the Confederates are collecting up, this was, I don't know, until noon basically. Like they played until noon and got 107 points. They would have gotten twice that, 214, if I didn't trip that wire on the first day, on the 0th day, essentially, the 30th. Anyway, it's just, it's like, in terms of actual victory conditions, I am way ahead of where I could have been with the Union, even though I'm like, in a horrible position at this point, simply because what I did gave me some argument for the Confederates moving. That's within the operational game. But I'm way behind the actual historical situation at Gettysburg, where the Union came in, wasn't facing as many Confederates. The Confederates spent more time over there, but didn't get any victory points for it. It's hideous. It's hideous. And I just don't know what to do about it. Like I used all this as like triggering conditions, and I think I'm going to just ignore the victory points. But I'm going to try another day. I don't know if I'll make it through. A couple of Cav and another Confederate supply wagon are over there. Those might come in down here at Chambersburg Pike, which I think is down here, which is not a particularly good place for the Confederate forces to be coming in. That's why Merritt was down there scoping around, right? All right, that is the end of the road here. I will probably be playing an 18XX game for a while. Then I'll come back up and see if I can fucking cope with this when maybe the weather's cooler or something. I had a non-game related annoyance. I have some fluorescent lights that I use a lot. I have a lot of fluorescent lights, but I have a couple that are, the big bar type lights. They're basically what's lighting up that area down there right now. And I don't know how many are in each panel. Usually they come in pairs, and at least one of the pairs has burned out. Now, you might say, well, big fucking deal. But it has become so difficult for me to get anything done. Like, I haven't, gone out and gotten clothes that fit me, which I really need to, now that I'm fatter. And I was able to get booze at least, but shopping has been a hellish situation for me for this last, for the last few years, really. But in particular, this time, this week was not I should have gone shopping this week. This week was I should have gone shopping last week. This is the third week in my cycle that I seem to have fallen into, almost always going 3 weeks or close to it. Which means that, like, I'm really running down on food. But that's a solution to the I'm getting too fat, right? I don't know. It doesn't seem to help. And yeah, I've got thoughts of like, yeah, I don't think I'm going shopping next week either. I think I'm going to go to the more local place. It's only a 25-minute walk. But it's the worst 20, like, it's not the most unpleasant 25 minutes of walking, but it's the steepest part of the hill to get up and down. And, you know, I haven't bothered taking care of my teeth. They're rotting in my jaw. I haven't gotten new glasses, which I really should. All this shit. A lot of it's based on this idea of, I don't know if I'm going to make it through the next couple weeks. I just don't know if I'm going to survive, right? I'm hoping I don't. But, you know, keeps turning out that, yeah, I'm still alive and I still have food and all that shit. And I don't know. It's just, once you start deciding to live every day or week or whatever as if it is your last, you stop, like, caring about anything, right? It's why I always thought it was a really, really stupid piece of advice, but I so badly want it to be my last at this point. And, you know, physically there are things going wrong that maybe are more intensive that I wouldn't take care of no matter what. That I keep hoping, you know, they're just gonna overcome me all at once. Anyway, let's send this one up on that happy note.